Everyone, I'm Captain Logan, and welcome once again to the Number One Show, the show where I tell you about all the number ones, one-shots, and jumping on points that I read in a week and help you try to figure out what you might want to go pick up at the comic book store. Starting tomorrow, we will have brand new episodes of this show. I finally caught up, and these are all new too, but we finally caught up to the books for the week that we're discussing things. This is from last week, and then what you'll see tomorrow is all the number ones that I will have read for this week. I want to say thanks as always to Elite Comics in Northern Park, Kansas for helping me out with the show. If you're ever in the Kansas City area, check them out. They're absolutely fantastic. We sure appreciate them making this show possible for us. We're going to jump right into it straight away with Ninja Turtles number 50. Now this, of course, is not a number one, but I think it's a very good jumping on point, and I'm constantly trying to get people to read this series. I like to check in with it whenever I can on new comic reviews because, in my opinion, this is one of the best things on the stands, has been since it began, and it still doesn't have anything like the amount of readers that I think it's worth and it should have. And there's a lot of really great, monumental, milestone things going on in this, both for Ninja Turtles and for this series. This is an oversized $8 issue. It's worth every penny, in my opinion. It is very, very action-packed. I would make the case that it is maybe a little bit longer than it needs to be, but the art is gorgeous, and I have a hard time caring. There are a lot of really great moments for all of these characters. We have this big, massive, exciting showdown with the Shredder, and we finally are to the fated epic roof fight that was done in the original Mirage comics, of course, very early, and we finally get there here, and the way it's handled and the way it's kind of turned on its head, and is really exciting, and we are really forging new territory with Ninja Turtles. The first 50 issues of this or the first 49 issues of this are mostly taking the mythology that was already there and the characters and stuff, and doing new things with them and kind of reinventing them. And now I feel like we are really forging ahead into new territory and doing going to places that we've never been to before with Ninja Turtles. Now I'm sure there will be plenty more of, here's a character we haven't done yet, let's go ahead and see what that character would be like in this world. But it really feels like we're not just reinventing now, we're going somewhere brand spanking new. And Splinter is the character to look for, to watch for right now. What he's done by the end of this is a wonderful culmination of all of that kind of ethically ambiguous stuff that I've been talking about a lot with this series. We're not real sure what he's capable of, and he takes his traditional values from feudal Japan to a brand new place here, and it's really exciting. This is a really big deal issue, and if you've not been reading this at all, but you like Ninja Turtles and you've been wondering if maybe you should try it, but it's just been going on too long, you don't want to buy all of it, try this. I know it's $8. It's kind of pricey, but I think just as an experience all by itself, I think you're likely to really, really enjoy it. Next up, oh, and that I didn't even say who that was, but of course that's Tom Waltz with art by Mateus Santalugo. I hope we keep Santalugo forever. Every time we replace him with somebody else, I get a little bit bummed out. I just love him on this book. His art is so dynamic. It's so edgy looking in the right kind of way. It's just absolutely gorgeous. Let's go on now to some Marvel stuff. There were two What If books that came out this week, and I do not know why these What Ifs came out when they did, but they're both Infinity things. Why? Right in the middle of Secret Wars, or getting kind of to the tail end of Secret Wars. I don't know why we're doing Infinity things. These were both really weird to me because I had to kind of go back in time and rack my brain and try to remember what exactly happened in Infinity and why the things that are happening in this are different and messing with things and supposed to be a novelty. I only read that once and once a month, and I haven't sat down and reviewed it. So these were strange. I think it's really weird to do What If while we're doing Secret Wars, because that has such a what if feel to it anyway, and I don't know if these are universes that are supposed to exist or supposed to have existed, because usually what if is like you go to another reality, and the point of it is, what if something happened differently, but they are supposed to be different realities that are in the Marvel Universe. The Marvel Multiverse, we just changed how that works, the fundamental concept of that with Secret Wars, and now we're doing What If comics. I'm not complaining, I love What If, I miss What If. What's really cool about both of these is, so this is What If Inhumans, and this is What If Thanos. I'll talk about them individually here in a second, but what's cool about both of these is that you open it up and they do say, what if such and such happened? Now, I wish we were still doing that on the covers, but a lot of what ifs, they're always one-shots these days. A lot of what ifs in the last several years, you open it up and even inside it doesn't, if memory serves, it doesn't have that, and it's kind of just a, what if, whatever, and you're like, well, it's supposed to be a question. You got to finish the question. That's the exciting thing. So anyway, this one, What If Infinity, Thanos #1 is written by Joshua Williamson. These are actually, if memory serves, I'm sorry, we'll do Inhumans first. That's the first thing on my list. Inhumans #1, both of these written by Joshua Williamson. Artist here is Riley Rossmo, and the what if situation here is, what if Black Bolt betrayed Earth? And basically the idea is that Black Bolt has made a deal with Thanos in order to try to save the planet, and if he hadn't done this, then we would all be doomed, so it's a necessary evil, and it leads to the destruction of the Avengers, and he knew that was going to happen, but he allowed it because otherwise he thought the entire Earth was going to be destroyed. And then by the end of the issue, there's a lot of question as to how necessary that really was. This was not great. I thought that this was a little bit too easy. It's a little truncated. That can be a problem with the What If formula sometimes. I felt like this maybe needed another issue to really tell a whole story. It does have that very old school What If feel, where it's more about seeing the broad strokes of a thing, of a different version of a story play out, than it is really focused on a character. So I don't feel like I can complain about it too much for that, but I did think that a lot of the plot points were just a little bit too easy, and I thought that we kind of threw Black Bolt under the bus a little bit. I found it hard to believe that he would do this the way he does in this book, but this is not a character I'm real familiar with, and maybe he's more ambiguous than I'm not going to pretend like I know a whole lot about Black Bolt. I've read him in a few things here and there. I'm sure he's going to become a much bigger deal as we move forward, because the Inhumans are more and more becoming everywhere, and are in some ways kind of supplanting the X-Men, or at least coexisting with them. So I expect to, this time next year, know a lot more about Black Bolt. So I'm certainly not all that qualified to talk about this issue, but it was just okay. The Thanos one was the same way. This is written once again by Joshua Williamson with art by Mike Henderson, and this sees Thanos as becoming an Avenger during Infinity, and he ends up replacing Captain America ultimately as the leader. And everybody in this is so dumbed down in order to buy that Thanos has their best interests at heart. He makes it very evident when he joins them that he's just doing it so that he can destroy the Earth in what he sees as the right way. He doesn't like this idea that the bad guys are going to destroy the planet in such a way as to retool it and fix it. He likes death. He wants the destruction of all things, and so he says, no, I gotta have no Earth, the decimation of Earth. And so he comes in and says, yeah, I'll help you save the Earth so that later on I can destroy it the right way. And just because he works with, again, broad strokes, so we don't really get to see this in the moment, and that's a lot of why it doesn't work, but Thanos works with the Avengers long enough that a lot of them come to trust him too much, and it's a little bit silly. I mean, like, I never buy Thanos as a master manipulator. He's such a mustache-twirling villain because he's about death. That's what he is. Like his ideology doesn't allow for this, and so I just think it's really funny whenever Thanos is able to convince people that he's a good guy. It worked a little bit better in the Secret Wars version of Infinity Gauntlet. I liked it a little bit more there, where like nobody trusts him, but they're kind of forced in a place where the Nova Corps, they're kind of forced in a place where they sort of have to, and then they're just always kind of looking out the corner of their eye. But here it's like we trust Thanos now, and that's, I don't know, it's kind of silly, but it was fun to get to see Thanos fighting with the Avengers and leading them and replacing Captain America. Next up, it is Invincible Iron Man #1. This is the long-anticipated beginning of Brian Michael Bendis' run on this character with art by David Marquez. I liked this a lot. This is the most fun I've had with Bendis stuff in quite a while. His X-Men stuff got a little bit tired for me. I always continued to like it, and I honestly, I haven't finished the last several issues of both of those runs, but it started to become standard Bendis decompression. I felt the same way about Ultimate Spider-Man also. I felt like he was, once again, too many thumbs in too many pies, or too many thumbs. His thumbs in too many pies, and he just seemed kind of unfocused and a little bit meandering all over the place. This does not read that way at all. This is at least first issue, and we'll see how it goes as it moves along. But this engaged me right away. I love his voice for Tony Stark. I think that Tony's really interesting in this because he is still the playboy he always has been. He still is the womanizer. He's still a narcissist, but that's so much of a part of his chemical makeup. It's almost like it's this detrimental thing to him where he's detached and just doesn't know how to look at the world properly, and he's got a lot more humility here than I've ever seen him, even though he has all that stuff still there. Like, this is a Tony Stark who is who's showing a lot more vulnerability than I've seen with him before, and a lot more clear, open humanity. And I really liked that take on it, and it makes a lot of sense from where he's come before to where he is here. If you don't know anything about the reboot, or you didn't read Secret Wars, this is very easy to just pick up and start reading. It kind of reads as just the next step in this character, like Secret Wars never happened. I had the same thing with Doctor Strange. I'll get to that here in a little bit. I have the same thing with Amazing Spider-Man. I feel like the point of the reboot was to make it possible to retcon things that we just don't want to have to deal with anymore, and to try to, and I think this is somewhat unfortunate, but we'll see what it's like, and to kind of, as I keep saying, to streamline the marketing, to have a consistent marketing campaign between the comics and the movies, so it's harder to make all the movie stuff the most important thing with the comics if you keep the continuity exactly the same, the way it is. So it's different from what 52 was supposed to be. This is not, let's reboot and make it easy for anybody to come in and start like from scratch. These are all, so far, good jumping on points, and people could come in from nowhere and probably enjoy them, but it isn't about getting rid of the histories. It's about coming up with the most logical way possible that doesn't look too gimmicky to pick and choose what we want moving forward. And I mean, I hate that we've had to do that, or that Marvel has felt the need to do that, but it's the most sophisticated. It's done in the most sophisticated way I've seen it. Looking at the way DC has handled some of their reboots, especially 52, looking at the way Spawn has handled it when it's done that, other things like that. This has worked really well, I think, and I think folks that didn't look at Secret Wars and really hated the idea of the reboot, I think if you jump onto a few of these books that you think sound intriguing, you will be surprised by just how much has not changed. But who knows moving forward what will, and I haven't read we haven't read Daredevil yet, and I know that there's a major retcon stuff there where his secret identity is not outed once again. So I mean, I realize that there will be some major things, but the books that I've read so far have not had that. It is, by the way, really weird to read these new books before Secret Wars is over, though I haven't read the most recent issue of Secret Wars because I was concentrated on #1s this week, and so there might have been a big enough thing that happened there where it does feel more, because it was supposed to be over by now, where it feels a little bit more natural moving forward. Anyway, I need to move on, but I'll talk about this briefly. as I said, Bendis' dialogue as always is really top notch. It's a little bit tighter than I'm used to, which is excellent. There is a potential love interest here who I kind of think Tony Stark is going to end up not being with, but it's flirting with. Maybe this is going to be a love interest. There's another super genius who is a woman and who has come up with accidentally a cure for mutants, which is immediately interesting, especially because Michael Bendis just came off of X-Men, so it's cool that we're immediately tying those two things together. And it is your classic trying to make sure that that a futuristic technology, that major breakthroughs don't get in the wrong hands, and she accidentally stumbled upon this and is afraid of doing anything with it, and so it'll be exciting to see what moves on from there, or how it moves on from there. A lot of really funny stuff here, wonderful levity, and the art is magnificent. It's really pretty. It reminds me a lot of Ultimate Comics stuff, and you know, the way the lighting and the color is handled especially is very much like Ultimate. It's interesting to see those two worlds blending now, and the way his new suit works is really cool and seems like a natural development, both technologically and in reflecting his personality. I liked this a lot. Next up, it is Marvel .1. I'm not going to have a lot to say about this or Avengers #0. Both of these are basically quick setups for several new books to kind of get you excited about a new series starting, and to give you a sense of what those are going to be like within sort of a loose framework. So with Marvel .1, it's setting up the what is it? The Contest of Champions characters, the Collector, and he is I'm not real familiar with that stuff, so so forgive me because I'm trying to remember what all this was. You've got you've got the Collector and his minion, and they are trying to win this contest in order to have possession, I guess, of the new the new Omniverse, if I'm understanding it correctly. And so they're looking throughout the remnants of Battleworld, trying to figure out which characters they want to use as playing pieces in their game. And there's all these rules about how it works, and that's all based on the old, I guess, Contest of Champions miniseries from the early 80s. There's a Contest of Champions book that came out this week. I'll talk about that briefly as well. And anyway, so as we're looking at those different characters, we're seeing these new status quos for several new books. One of them is Carnage. That's very exciting. It looks like a lot of fun to me. I really like the internal monologue for Carnage and kind of getting into his head. We're not humanizing him, but getting to understand him a little bit more. There is this wonderful little short story with Groot and Rocket Raccoon that absolutely cracked me up. It's got my favorite Rocket Raccoon line from a long time. Rocket and Groot end up running into some trick-or-treaters, and the trick-or-treaters are not impressed with Rocket and Groot's costumes. They think that they're cosplaying, and there's some fun little commentary about just how good cosplaying has gotten and how hard it is to impress people, and with it. And I think that there's even broader implications to that. Just as technology gets better, it's hard to impress people in general with these kinds of achievements. And anyway, but there's this great line where Groot is trying to point out something crazy that's happening in front of them, and he says, "I am Groot" several times, and Rocket says, "Yes, I know, I see what's going on, I've got eyes in my head, and they see all the things." And I thought that was just an absolutely hilarious line. So it was a lot of fun for that, and the Daredevil teaser was really exciting. I love how stylized that is. I love the art there, and it's very early 2000s Daredevil. It looks a lot like Bendis' Daredevil, and it has and it's got a lot of stuff in silhouette. It's got this really interesting character who's able to be invisible, but to Daredevil it doesn't matter because he's blind, and so there are some potentially really cool thematic things there. Overall, this was fun. I liked it. I don't know that it's a necessary thing. It feels a lot more like just a book of ads for a new series. Not that we're making you pay for the pages they're going to be at the beginning of the books. It's not like that. These are, of course, new pages and new bits of story, but it does feel a little bit like paying for a promotional thing, and I've always had that with these. And so I mean, like, if you just can't wait to see what the tones of these books are going to be, I would say definitely pick this up. For the story that's told here, it's in itself is also a teaser as far as the framework, so you're not really missing anything, I don't think, if you skip this, or if you skip Avengers #0, and it has the same kind of thing, where there's this kind of framework story where we've got this new team that we're really kind of cryptic and mysterious about what the team is, so I guess I won't say what it is just in case you happen to want to read this, but then at the end, it's a supervillain team, and they're sizing up all the different Avengers teams and trying to figure out if they can beat them, and then you get to the end, and it's like, and we're this team, okay. It wasn't a big exciting reveal for me, but it was, but in and itself, again, is also a teaser, just like the Contest of Champions thing was. I think it's fun that there's at least a framework, that we're not just, you know, charging $6 for like these little short stories that are just kind of out in the ether. It's fun to have something to tie them together. So that's okay. But anyway, the Avengers titles that I got most excited about looking at this are Scarlet Witch and Vision. The Vision stuff, the identity stuff with the Vision in this is really interesting, and I would say that not knowing where that's going exactly, you may want to pick this up just for that if that's a book you're excited about or if you really like those characters. I don't know if that's like the catalyst that's going to set that whole book off, or if what goes on here is kind of all we're going to, or I don't know, it can't be all we're going to get for that, but I mean, like, it's a pretty good revelation when we find out just what Vision's how he's decided to deal with the fact that he's seeing all these old memories everywhere, and like that he's having a hard time operating because he can't stop seeing all these different versions of things that have happened in the past. And like I said, he makes a choice, or he has already made a choice before this story begins, and when he reveals that to Scarlet Witch, it's kind of horrifying, and it's really sad, and I like that a lot. I thought there was a lot of pathos there. And then I also, just looking back through this again to remind myself what was here, I also thought the Deadpool stuff was kind of interesting. Deadpool becoming a full-fledged Avenger, and I don't necessarily love that idea, but what I liked about reading that section was that he seemed a lot more like the somewhat more, not that Deadpool's ever down to earth, but the writing anyway, it was a lot more of the more down to earth Joe Kelly type Deadpool, and I was really kind of excited about that. Kind of grounding him more in the reality of Marvel rather than all the fourth wall breaking stuff, and he's it's a lot more like reading Deadpool inside of X-Force, and I liked that a lot about it. I don't know if I buy Captain America bringing Deadpool in, but I do like their dynamic together quite a bit. So anyway, like I said, some interesting things here, might be worth picking up just for those things, but otherwise, once again, I think it is pretty skippable. All right, we gotta go faster. We got too many things. Next up, Amazing Spider-Man #1. This is, of course, by Dan Slott with art by Giuseppe Camicoli, and this was just kind of crazy and all over the place. If you love Slott Spider-Man, you will continue to love Slott Spider-Man. That's my review of this. It's just okay. It's just status quo that I'm just not that interested in. That's all. I think that the writing has gotten a little bit more reined in. It's not quite as all over the place. I like that we're not being as cutesy with internal monologue and narration and stuff like that as we had been earlier with this, but I just don't like Spider-Man being so closely tied in the professional world with Peter Parker. It's the same issue that I have with Batman Incorporated. Nobody's going to be surprised if they ever found out that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. Now, I do like that he has another guy filling in to pretend like he's Spider-Man so that he can operate as Peter Parker and he won't be suspected as much. But anyway, so what we're doing here is the global Spider-Man. So Spider-Man is not just in New York City anymore. There's there's a, he, of course, because Peter Parker has this big corporation, he's kind of globetrotting now and trying to bring his sense of responsibility to the world, because after all, what Peter Parker brings to the table is more than just his spider powers. He's also a scientist, and he's a brilliant scientist. And the poor man's Tony Stark thing, I think, is interesting. There's this notion here that Peter Parker doesn't know how to run a corporation, and that he is too idealistic and is not enough of a businessman to be running this kind of a corporation. So it's not that he has to be completely ruthless, but he goes too far the other direction, where because he's not about making money at all and he just wants to help people, there is question as to whether or not he can sustain his company and keep things going. So he does interesting things like he has a middle management salary, and he refuses to take a CEO salary. There are people who he pays more than himself, and then uses that sometimes in his argument for trying to get them to do things. Especially the guy that he pays to be Spider-Man, where he's like, you know, this is just too much work, and he's like, hey, I pay you more than I pay myself, and I run this company. Some of that I thought was kind of fun. I also like that we've gotten past the whole Spider-Man has to make sure that no one dies when he's around, and he's finally realized how unrealistic that is. And I don't know if that happened in a gradual way, because frankly, I've not been reading Spider-Man lately, but it does, I don't know, it does feel like Slott sobered up a little bit with the character, but I am reading bits and pieces here and there, and I've always had this with Slott with Spider-Man, where I'll go into an issue and I'll kind of like it, and then when I read everything together, I go, oh, this doesn't work at all. So anyway, I don't know if this is a thing that I would want to keep reading, but again, if you've liked Slott Spider-Man in the past, I think he's still delivering all the things that people love about Slott Spider-Man. It's still really over the top. There's still there's still lots of really great fun action. It's still all about the different Spider characters. He's really kind of kept that going. And one thing I do kind of like about it is it feels almost like Peter Parker is forcing the Spider-Man 2099 world to come to pass, maybe, on accident. Now, I don't know if that's where we're going, but it sure feels like it might be, and I kind of like that idea a lot, that he's so against the corporate world mentality, but he's running this corporation, and he might accidentally create that or be part of the machine that does create that. I think it's interesting working toward, because we've already got Alchemax and all that, and we've got 2099 here. The idea of, and I didn't mention that there was a preview for 2099 in one of those issues that I talked about earlier. But anyway, it's really interesting that that as we seem to be moving more toward that world, we've got a Peter Parker that's that's running a mega corporation now. Anyway, so that's what I have to say about that. Next up, we go to really briefly Contest of Champions #1. This is written by Al Ewing with art by Paco Medina, and once again, this is another one of these things that is kind of giving us just some previews of things. And there is a Contest of Champions, so this is going to be an ongoing thing. It actually felt more like a preview book until I realized that it wasn't ongoing, and the idea is that, so excuse me, it's not really a preview thing, but it's using some stuff from that other preview book, and so it made me think that anyway, so scratch that. It's not really a preview thing. It's more taking really obscure versions of characters and pitting them up against each other and seeing who would win in a fight. That's the idea, and that was a novelty when the original Contest of Champions happened back in 1982 in a way that it's not really now. So if you like that kind of thing, if you like just, you know, let's read a brawl and see who wins, and have maybe a little bit of, learn a little bit about characters through that, this might be your bag. The European Punisher was really interesting to me. I liked that a lot, and I like what we learned about his worldview and how he operates and the ways he is the same but different from the American Punisher. So it's not just slugfest. There definitely is some characterization and some discussion of worldviews and stuff in this, but not a thing I would read regularly, but it might be a fun diversion from the rest of the Marvel U to just see characters, because you'll learn about obscure characters that you never probably would have heard of before. There's a Venom from another universe here that killed his Peter Parker, and he's wearing part of a Spider-Man suit as like a sash, and I don't know, it's kind of off the beaten path and fun, and I don't know, if you, again, if you like seeing random people fight, then that's your book. Next up, there is, we've got Doctor Strange #1, another really long-awaited book. It's kind of neat that this and Iron Man came out the same week. What a big week, especially because of those two books. This is written, of course, by Jason Aaron with art by Chris Bocciolo. This is just wonderful, and I'm not a big fan of the occult stuff, as some of you probably know, and the mystical stuff. I can take it or leave it, and when it shows up in books, it's kind of okay, but it's not a thing that I like run toward. But I really loved all the nightmare imagery in this. I really like how complex Doctor Strange is. I like how, just like a lot of other Jason Aaron's books, especially lately, this feels very out of time. This feels like it could have been written and drawn in the 80s pretty easily, with the exception of maybe some references here and there. But Doctor Strange in this is just a super interesting character. He is trying so hard to do the right thing, and yet he's just really emotionally charged. Like, he just goes so far in both directions in helping people and then judging someone for something and hurting them. And he's got so much power. It's kind of a book about how it's hard to not abuse it, but then also there's question as to whether or not he goes far enough with it too, whether or not he really is the Sorcerer Supreme the way he's supposed to be, and I think that's really interesting. Nothing really weird yet, as for, well, I mean, it's weird, don't get me wrong, but in the way you would expect Doctor Strange to be, but it's not like new Strange yet, as we heard that it would be. It really reads, at least this first issue, like the Doctor Strange that I'm familiar with. We don't have the battle axe yet. None of the weird stuff we've heard about is here yet. So it looks like we're gonna get the origin for all that, and Jason Aaron's gonna probably build that kind of gradually. Aaron finds a really distinct voice for this character, I think. It is looser and less formal than I might have expected. I was a little bit surprised by how kind of just regular, like now speak it was. It works for the way he's doing this character, but it's not what I'm familiar with when I've read things with Doctor Strange in it. But I don't know a lot about this character, so just from kind of an uninitiated person to this character, just have seen him in things here and there. I enjoyed this quite a bit, and I think that it's gonna catch on. I also think that this is very likely to be the basis for how this character is handled in the movies. It reads very much like what I would expect them to do in trying to get this character away from Tony Stark, where he's still a womanizer. He's got that kind of thing going on, but he's not the same character. He is very different, and I think that it's likely that they kind of go this direction with it. All right, so moving away from Marvel now, we go on to something that I didn't think I would like at all, and then was really surprised that I kind of dug it. It's the Misadventures of Grumpy Cat? What? Misadventures of Grumpy Cat #1 from Dynamite. So we take this this character that went, this cat that went viral on YouTube, and it got so viral that it's had a lot of merchandising, and now it's got to have a comic book. And I took one look at this, and I'm like, really? Okay, guess it's a #1. I guess I'll try it out. And wouldn't you know, this is really fun. It's nothing special. It's nothing brand spanking new. But there are 4 little short stories and 4 different kinds of art, and they're all really polished. They all look really good. It's just a really clean, good-looking comic book. And what I was really surprised by with it is it's kind of family friendly. I thought this would be a really raunchy comedy. It's not. I wanted to give this to my kid. What this well, what it reminds me most of is Garfield. I mean, you've got this cat that is, and it's not exactly Garfield, but you've got this cat that is really lethargic, really lazy, really grumpy all the time, but is constantly playing pranks on people. So like it comes from that tradition, but doesn't rip it off. Really, I don't think. I mean, maybe Garfield was really in the back of these people's minds, or maybe they did this completely on purpose. But it's not a thing I thought of while I was reading. I thought about it later. There's a lot of fun stuff in this about the comic book industry. I like there's a story where Grumpy Cat and Pokey go like prowling the streets as kind of a Batman and Superman, and they do kind of a Batman versus Superman parody thing, which is so funny to me because that movie's not even out yet, and we've been seeing parodies of it all over the place. Like, all we have right now is a couple of trailers and a title and some images. And I mean, that is going to be the biggest thing since Avengers. I mean, it's going to be ridiculous because we can't. Well, that and Star Wars, but I mean, like, we can't stop doing stuff with it. We haven't even seen the thing yet. And anyway, there's a lot of fun stuff about superhero tropes, and again, some of it you've kind of seen before, but there's some clever things too that that felt kind of new. Where there's a lot of stuff about the impracticality of superhero costumes and how in the world could like why in the world would you wear a mask that makes it difficult to see where you're going, and all that kind of stuff. And like Grumpy Cat's superhero name is the same as his real name, but Pokey is really concerned with him trying to keep a secret identity. It's like, this isn't about anything practical. We're just kind of playing and pretending, and then they actually have to deal with a real crime and what happens when they do that. But anyway, it reads a lot like Saturday morning or Sunday morning funny papers, and I think it really works well that way. And like I said, not a bad thing for your kids. Surprised to say. Next up, a book from Dark Horse called Dead Vengeance. This is Dead Vengeance #1, written by Bill Morrison with art by Keith Champagne. I liked this a whole lot. This is a really great period 40s story that's a throwback to pulp age stuff, and it doesn't linger real hard on the supernatural stuff. It sets that up, and then the whole thing is a story about how this character became undead in the first place, and the cliffhanger is still set in the flashbacks. And so it's not really a flashback story, it's more of a slightly nonlinear story. It's more your standard, set us up and know it's supernatural, which I can resist this sometimes, but it's okay here, where it's like, we set it up so that you know it's a supernatural thing, so you know this guy has died, and then you see how exactly that happens, and there's some really nice political intrigue stuff here. What we've got is a radio DJ who is to expose corruption and is aware of a lot of things going on with the mob and the police in bed together, and he's trying to make that public and make it known, and he's talking about things that everybody else is scared to talk about. And I really like how determined this guy is. He's a wonderfully sympathetic character. And I think he's really endearing, where the mob goes as far, I guess I'm giving a thing away here, but the mob goes as far as to kill his wife, and yet he still keeps going. And I found myself like really engrossed in it, and feeling bad for this guy, but being really impressed with his conviction, and really kind of wanted to read the next issue. I was really excited about it. It's got a really authentic period feel. It's got a really authentic dialogue for that period, and references for the culture, and I thought this was just absolutely solid. Next up, we move on to some DC stuff. It's Batman and Robin Eternal #1. This is written by James Tynion IV, co-plotted with Scott Snyder, and art by Tony Daniel. I like this a lot more than I thought I would. This is setting up Cassandra Cain, and Cassandra Cain in this version of Batman's continuity, because of course we have, again, with 52 sort of pseudo-rebooted, so characters you haven't seen in a long time probably didn't exist until just now, or I mean, like, weren't important yet, and like now we're doing things with them. Cassandra Cain, and kind of reinventing them. Cassandra Cain in this version was working with Batman without anybody's knowledge, and there's this big mystery about a thing that Batman did a long time ago that's allegedly absolutely horrifying, and a thing that he covered up, and he's got this whole message to Dick Grayson of I am not who you thought I was. And so the big mystery moving forward is did he really do what it looks like maybe he did, and are we really throwing Bruce Wayne that far far under the bus after after he's basically gone, and we have this new version of Bruce Wayne who's an amnesiac and doesn't know who he used to be. Are we really going to go that far to retroactively change his history this dramatically? I suspect it will turn out to not be as horrifying as it looks, but I guess we'll see if we're really going to go that far and what that's going to be like. I can sometimes resist those kinds of retroactive things. Snyder has a tendency to do this a lot, where he goes back and says, but I guess a lot of Batman writers do this. Morrison did this too, but I mean, like, where you go back and you say, early on, before Batman, or even in the early days of Batman, here are major things that happened that you didn't know about that defined things. And sometimes I think it's hard to make that consistent and make it work, but it can also be really fascinating and really interesting as just a case by case sort of thing. This is all about the legacy of Robin. I'm sure Robin fans are going to eat this up with a spoon. It brings in all of the different Robins that or all the different ex-Robins that we've had, and even characters that wished they were Robin, like Harper Row, and gives them all kind of things to do that make sense within the narrative. This is much tighter, or at least feels tighter at the beginning than Batman Eternal did. Now, this is a weekly series. We will see if it starts to run off the rails right away, like I felt like Batman Eternal did, and if it starts meandering and telling too many subplots at the same time. But if it doesn't do that, and it every week gives you more of this story that we have here, I may be on board with it. I didn't hate this. I'm not sure about it. I'm a little bit trepidatious, partly just because of how I felt about Batman Eternal, and I didn't read all of it. I dropped off at some point because I just wasn't really enjoying it, and I thought that the writing was super inconsistent. So we'll see if they've learned some lessons from that experience, and it looks like from this first issue that maybe they have. Next up, we move on to Telos #1. Telos? Really? We gave this guy a book? Once again, DC being really counterintuitive. I've not talked to a lot of people that, I mean, it sold okay, I guess, but we haven't sold, we haven't been doing really well after that, but I mean, like, I haven't talked to a whole lot of people that loved Convergence. We're gonna take the guy from Convergence and give him a book now that looks kind of like Really? Okay, this is written by Jeff King with art by Carlo Pagulayan. Now, having said that, I didn't hate this, surprisingly enough. You know why? Because it's telling a story. Convergence was a lot more about kind of gimmickly just getting us to the next place and having a lot of, ramped up melodrama, but with characters that I just wasn't all that excited about, and just, stretching stuff out. I'm like, nah, just get to the point, like the story you're telling is not the point of the story, and that's a problem. This is kind of okay. It also reads a lot like Silver Surfer. What we have is, with Telos, is a guy who is trying to get back to his family, and has to rely on Brainiac to get there. Brainiac knows where his family is, and he just wants to find them again and try to lead some semblance of a normal life. And so Brainiac is acting like he just has Telos' best interest at heart and that he wants to help him, and Telos doesn't trust him, of course, and Telos is trying to strong-arm Brainiac and threaten him because he has the powers to do that. Now, I think it's ridiculous that Brainiac would make Telos powerful enough that he could actually defeat Brainiac. Yeah, he gave him powers, but isn't it the same thing as Silver Surfer and Galactus with the power cosmic? Isn't this the exact same problem that we had with the second Fantastic Four movie back in the 2000s, where you give a guy a sliver of your power, and because he has a sliver of it, he can fly up and just blow you up? It just doesn't make any sense to me. Spoiler alert for that. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me, and I gotta have that with this a little bit too. But I sort of like the idea of Telos maybe sort of being DC's Silver Surfer. I don't know if moving forward if I will find myself really getting on board with that idea or not, but he's not unsympathetic, he's not completely unlikable, he's still a little bit generic, but I like the idea of having this kind of herald of Brainiac, and seeing if he can get away from Brainiac, and if we aren't just doing a Silver Surfer clone. I mean, like, moving forward, if he goes in his own direction, then it could be really cool. The big thing I didn't like about this was just the heavy-handedness of the literary reference with Greek mythology. We make this really big deal out of how out of paralleling this to Odysseus, and it's just such an obvious parallel the way it's played, and then at the end it just straight up spells it out. And I'm like, no, we didn't need that. Next up, it's another one of those sort of overwritten, padded out a little bit DC annuals. This is Green Arrow Annual #1, written by Benjamin Percy with art by Simon Kurdansky. Simon Kurdansky! And Simon Kurdansky is the reason to pick this up. He's one of my favorite artists, and it was really fun to see him on this. I love all the Halloween stuff he's drawing here. We really, I complained about this being padded again, but there is this nice section in the middle where we get to really take our time looking at this Halloween parade and this kind of the Day of the Dead stuff, and it's just gorgeous. And I love the attention to detail and all the floats and things we get to see and all the creepy surreal stuff, and it's great. Anyway, so what we've got here is basically this new species of man-wolves that have come up because of some kind of a drug, and you've got your standard people don't understand us, so we have to do something about that plot, and it's a little generic, I think. You've got this man-wolf guy that's trying to lead all the other ones, and he says, okay, if people won't look at us as people, and they're afraid of us, then we'll give them something to be afraid about. And he basically turns into Magneto from the first X-Men movie and tries to turn everybody else into man-wolves, and that's kind of what this is about. There is a lot of social commentary about a lot of different contemporary hot button issues in this book and in this issue, but we've had this a lot with this book lately, where a lot of it just feels really in my face and it's not subtle enough. It's okay to deal with that stuff, and I think it's and these days I think it's even okay. I say these days because I used to not have this as much, but I've gotten to a point where I think it's okay to even tackle those things in comics, but from a character place. It just feels to look how political we're being, and look how relevant we are, and it's just too in your face about that, and it's not enough about Oliver Queen. It's not enough from his perspective. There is this interesting idea. I don't know if I like it, but it's interesting, and this is setting up a new story arc. It's not a one and done thing. It's sort of like Green Lantern, where it's doing a big setup for what's to move from where it's going moving forward, and there's this idea that people can't relate to Oliver Queen because he is the stereotypical one-percenter, and he's trying to figure out how to live in a world that looks at him that way, and actually dealing with the stigma attached to being too rich in today's society, and I think that's interesting, and that might be really cool moving forward. But some of the rest of it I just thought was kind of heavy-handed. All in all, I feel like these guys are just trying really hard to be the previous team, and I like that tone is back, and I like that supporting cast is back, and that we don't, and that we're not dealing with Kreisberg, because I didn't like that stuff at all. We're just trying to make this book look like the TV show, but it's just not as good as that stuff. And as the previous team, and it feels like it's trying really hard to live up to that, and it's not bad, but I think it needs to reel back a little bit and think more about telling a story and a little bit less about like what it wants to say about things. It's thinking about theme too primarily, and I wish that it would think about it more secondarily, I guess is what I'm saying. All right, next up from Boom Studios, it's Rowan's Ruin. This is a really interesting book. This is the first of a 4-part miniseries written by Mike Carey with art by Mike Perkins. A couple of Mikes here, and what we've got is this character study of very, very dialogue driven. This girl that is basically a haunted house story. who goes and does this house swap and gets to go move to London for a while, live in this girl's big, scary, spooky house. And at first, of course, she loves it. She's loving the culture, and there's all this really interesting stuff about how everything in Britain is old, or in London is old, even the air. And I thought that was really that was really interesting in the way that's playing into this thematically is really cool. And I'm liking this character. I'm liking the complexities of her. That she's spunky and she's kind of wide-eyed and excited, but then you know, to get to go on an adventure and explore the world. But then toward the end of the issue, you start to learn a little bit more about her background and you know, tragedy that's happened to her that informs who she is and why she's so introspective. And I like the way technology is utilized here in like internet chats and things like that, so that she has a lot of conversations with her parents. We get to learn more about those dynamics. And like I said, it is kind of a character study, and it's really dialogue driven. And I don't know, I like this quite a bit. Next up, Saints #1. Saints. This is with the dead fish on the back. This is written by Sean Lewis with art by Benjamin Mackey. I don't know what to make of this yet. This is a really disturbing, creepy-looking book. I like the art in this actually quite a bit. There's some fascinating imagery when we get into some occult ritual stuff. But this is, I'm not sure what to make of the story yet. I'm having a hard time like latching on to anything in this. You've got a rock band that seems more concerned with spells and incantations and dark magic than they are with music, and there's a lot of stuff about like people's like primal nature and not thinking about what they're doing and just impulsively doing things. And so it's very, very adult. It's very vulgar. It's very it's all about sex and violence. This definitely wasn't for me. Like I said, I'm not sure what to grasp onto right away. It's hard not to read, and I'm trying not to because I don't think that ultimately this is what this is. It's hard not to read it as just shock value and kind of you know relying on contemporary trends of things. You know, people want their comics to be adult and crass and crude, and I think it's saying something with that stuff, or it wants to, or it's going to, but I don't know what to make of it yet. As I said, this was definitely not for me. But anyway, I don't know, that's what I have to say about that book. Next up, it's Baboushka, Codename Baboushka, #1. This is a spy intrigue story that is written by Anthony Johnston with art by Shari Chankama, and it's published again by Image. This is an anti-hero, female anti-hero, who is taking down crime bosses, but the book makes a really big deal out of the fact that she's not a hero, that she's doing this for her own personal gain, and that it doesn't have anything to do with trying to make the world a better place. And I'm not sure why I'm supposed to care about her yet, besides the fact that she is really resourceful, really good at her job, really spunky. She's fun to read about, I suppose, but she's not a good person, and I'm hoping that we learn more about why that is and who she is and flesh that out as it moves forward. This has a lot of political and corporate intrigue. It's very much that kind of a thing. It's kind of 007 meets Hitman, and it's got a very international feel. Again, she's Russian. She calls herself Baboushka, but she of course has a real name. And it's it's also you know, it's got a lot of action, but it's also very dialogue driven as well, and has a tendency to have a lot of fun scenes where people are saying one thing and meaning something else. Lastly, no, we got two more things. So, also from Image, Papergirls, #1, Papergirls. This is written by Brian K. Vaughan with art by Cliff Ching. Oh boy! Oh boy, did I love this. This is a period late 80s story set in 1988. It's got wonderful authentic language and tech and culture. It's about some girls that all get together and go on a paper route together, and the lead one of them has this chip on her shoulder, and she doesn't trust anybody, and she's kind of rough around the edges. It's a very gritty street level thing, but it's just about a bunch of kids in a neighborhood, and this brought me back. This feels so much like that time period. Like, he just absolutely nails everything about that, and it is definitely an adult book. This is not a thing that you'd want to give your kids, but it's a thing for those of us that are maybe in our early to mid 30s, and that grew up in that period, or older, certainly, and giving us kind of one of these typical kids go find an alien thing stories. We had a lot of those in the late 80s. You had E.T., which is evoked here, and you had things like Flight of the Navigator and stuff like that. But it's that with more adult themes and with a much more sophisticated nature about it. I love how Brian K. Vaughan writes dialogue. The man is a pro at giving every character a very unique voice, but he's also a pro at keeping you engaged all the way through and making you constantly guess what's going to happen next, and making you really, really excited about what look in the moment like the most mundane of situations. But he also really likes to go to quirky places without it feeling like he's losing, without losing you when he goes there, and it's always within an internal logic and makes a lot of sense. Basically, these girls, as I said, going on a paper route, and they find a spaceship, and they or what looks like it might be a spaceship, and what happens at the end, it blew my mind. The last page made me take my glasses off and say, wow, oh boy, this book has got me. I'm going to keep buying this. I was just riveted. Finally, Survivors Club from Vertigo. This is, wow, we're already to the end, guys. Finally, here is... as I said, Survival Club from Vertigo. This is written by Lauren Bukes with art by Dale Halverson. What a interesting situation and setup here. I liked this a lot. This is a thriller story about a group of people who all were on some kind of an internet list and something mysterious happened to all of them in the late 80s. A lot of late 80s stuff today. And there's this girl who who used to play this video game that there's more than meets the eye to this thing, and it seems to maybe have some sort of mystical quality to it or something, and this video game is the clue that pulls all this stuff together. And when they watch, there's this new version of it that's about to come out, and when they watch gameplay about it on the internet, this situation is very, very contemporary. We've got a guy who, one of our main characters, or what I think looks like will become a main character, is a guy who makes his living doing gameplay on YouTube. And anyway, he's done some gameplay for this new game, and it affects all of them in a physical way. They can't watch it, and it does something to them. There's this wonderful mystery. You take your classic situation of, we bring a bunch of strangers together, sort of like on a reality show, where there's something, but this classic story of, they all have something in common, and we're not sure exactly what it is, and then because they all want to find out about it, they all become very close, and their lives are never the same again. It's that kind of story. I like this a lot. I like the setup quite a bit, and I definitely want to keep reading it. Guys, that's it for me. Wow, so many books, so many books. Thanks as always for watching. I sure appreciate it. And I hope that there are a couple things here that excite you that you might want to go pick up at the store this week. I hope this was helpful for you as you are going to see what you want to get. And I want to say thanks as always to Elite Comics in Overland Park, Kansas for helping me out with the show. If you ever want to send us anything to review on the Comic Vault, you can always send that to our P.O. Box. That's P.O. Box 4733, Overland Park, Kansas 66204. I'm Captain Logan, and happy reading.